Good morning, everyone, or good day. Just to let you know, we will be starting the webinar promptly in about 1 minute. There is a poll in the meantime. If you move to the chat menu, you'll see a poll asking where you're located today. And we would love to hear from you. I see people starting to respond. Thank you. So I see actually we are at the top of the hour, and therefore we'll get started. Thank you for joining us today at this webinar, where together we're going to explore the wider digital ecosystem. We're really delighted to have you all with us. I see from our first poll that we have a really, actually a really broad scope of participants today from all over. 9 or so and counting in Africa, 7 in the Americas, 4 in Asia, 8 in Europe, 1 in Oceania. And even in the chat, thank you so much for actually noting the countries where you're originating from today. Fascinating. And thank you so much for making time to be with us. You'll see these polls crop up throughout the session today as we move through the topic and explore this together. So, Guillaume, if you wouldn't mind, slide. And we'll move along. I'll introduce the organizers of today's event. You can advance one more slide. I am Cindy Mitchell. I'm a policy advisor at the Canada Centre for Mapping and Conservation at Natural Resources Canada. I'm very proud to join today's webinar from Southwestern Ontario, where the land on which I live and work is the traditional territory of the Indigenous, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples, who I acknowledge with respect and gratitude are the stewards of this beautiful land today and since time immemorial. And also with us today is Clinton Hyman. Clinton is the Deputy Director General with the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development in South Africa. So good morning or good day, Clinton. Hello. And there we see Clinton appearing and waving. Wonderful, thank you. We're also joined today by Mohammed Almabrook, Executive Director with the Geospatial Authority for Survey and Geospatial Information in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So hello, Mohammed.
Hi.
Hello. We three, Clinton, Mohammed, myself, are the co-conveners of a writing team who, along with about a dozen other UN member states, are tasked with scoping and defining the Future Geospatial Information Ecosystem for the UN Geographic Information Management Committee of Experts. And our writing team collaborates together to provide insights to the Committee of Experts on how to advance the Future Geospatial Ecosystem and assure its strong support in delivering on shared global initiatives like the UN Sustainable Development Goals and common challenges like climate action. Moving on to the next slide. Our writing team organized today's webinar and a second webinar taking place tomorrow, either March 19th or 20th, depending on your location, to specifically reach out to those active in the wider digital ecosystem beyond the geospatial digital ecosystem with 3 objectives. First, in defining the scope of the geospatial ecosystem, we've recognized that we need to foster a dialogue with a wider digital community. So today, to engage directly with you, we're using the Teams chat to launch polls throughout the session. Please respond to the polls if you would. Your thoughts and ideas are essential input to our work, and it's very appreciated. We'll be seeking other forms of engagement with you as well as we move forward with our work, but more about that later. For today, open your Teams chat in the Teams meeting window here to see all the responses to questions we move through. Second objective, we want to explore how the wider digital ecosystem is affecting social, economic, and environmental transformation, and understand how new technologies are advancing shared global challenges. To this end, we're honored and we're delighted to welcome among us today 8 distinguished thought leaders who represent a range of actors from the wider digital ecosystem and who will bring their unique perspectives to our discussions today. And thirdly, our writing team will use what we hear today during the webinar to help inform recommendations and strategies to drive beneficial change to a more equitable and integrated digital ecosystem where location and geographic data form a strong part of the purpose-driven, evidence-informed outcomes, ultimately bringing these recommendations to the UN GGIM member states and the Committee of Experts for their action. Now, a quick look at our agenda. If we move forward, we'll start with some words of welcome from 3 of our executive leaders in the digital space. Then we'll move to co-convener Mr. Almabrook, who will give us a quick debrief on the UN GGIM and the work of our Future Geospatial Information Ecosystem writing team. Following that, co-convener Mr. Hyman and I will dive a bit deeper. Clinton will be discussing the writing team's approach to scoping the ecosystem, and I will be introducing the general principles that underpin it. Now, interspersed in this deeper dive, we'll hear from our distinguished guest speakers as well as we unpack each of the principles in its turn and solicit your feedback as we go. Perfect. Now we can move on to our first opening remarks. Pleased to welcome, at least in spirit, Ms. Ingrid Vandenberg. Ingrid's a UN GGIM co-chair and also the Administrator General of the National Geographic Institute in Belgium.
Dear colleagues, friends, and citizens of the digital world, welcome to the global online seminar on exploring the wider digital ecosystem. As expressed in the title of our event, this mini-series seminar is designed as an exploration of the wider digital ecosystem to improve our collective understanding of current digital technologies, data flows, trends, creativity, innovation, and far-reaching development that drive change and progress. In our increasingly interconnected world, the digital ecosystem has become the backbone of our societies, economies, and governance. From artificial intelligence, emerging technologies, big data, geospatial innovation, cloud computing, UAVs, or mobile connectivity, this digital ecosystem is shaping how we learn, communicate, understand, trade, and respond to global challenges. Collectively, we are contributing to this digital ecosystem. Many of our children are born in it, and we owe it to them to work together to create a world that is safe, inclusive, sustainable, and accountable. We must also ensure the digital ecosystem benefits to everyone, as guided by the motto, leaving no one behind. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is our blueprint to consider holistically how we need to protect our environment and slow climate change, from forests to oceans to everywhere in between, address societal inequalities and gender balance, from developing countries to girls to everyone. The digital domain should not overtake our reality, but indeed help us improving the real world, the quality of life for our societies, the territories and ecosystems that we enjoy and wish to protect, and the needed careful balance between the economic growth and its impact on nature. We want a digital ecosystem that cares for progress for people, places, and planet. Geospatial information is key in building public digital infrastructure called for by member states in the Global Digital Compact, as it was adopted by the General Assembly last September. Looking into the future, we must harness the full potential of the digital ecosystem and our collective endeavors to drive for a better future, where data is a force for the public good. This digital ecosystem is comprised of many actors: governments, businesses, academia, civil society, and individuals. There is far too often a focus on technology and innovation and less on the actors and their diversity and how they must collaborate to create an inclusive, secure, reliable, and equitable digital future. People are essential, and today we have with us many of these actors that, in their own sphere influence, are at the forefront of the digital change. We want to learn from each other to understand how our digital spheres connect, intersect, and interact to drive positive change. Our geospatial community has many assets, data, tools, and expertise to address these global challenges. We are cognizant that we need to work collaboratively with all of you to be successful to change our world for the better in a global partnership. I look forward to hearing and learning from you how we can shape together the future digital ecosystem and strengthen the essential role and benefits of geospatial information within this wider digital ecosystem. Together, let's design a purpose-driven and people-centered digital ecosystem as a foundation for enabling smart decisions, achieving our global aspirations, driving sustainable development, and ensuring that no one is left behind in the digital age. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Mohammed Al-Sayal, who's the chair of UNGGIM Arab States and president of the General Authority for Survey and Geospatial Information in Saudi Arabia. Dr. Al-Sayal, we are absolutely thrilled to have you with us here today, and I hand the floor over to you for your opening remarks. Thank you. Here we are. Dr. Al-Sayal, you're muted at this point, if it's possible.
Okay, sorry. Okay,
No
now
problem.
I am on. I am on, and my talk will be short because I would like to let the floor for the others to give us this promising webinars. Thank you very much. Okay, dear colleague, I welcome this curriculum online webinar exploring the wider digital ecosystem. Geospatial information is critical for various applications, including urban planning, environmental monitoring, disaster management, and transportation. It helps in making informed decisions by providing a spatial context to data. The future of the geospatial ecosystem involves moving beyond traditional spatial data infrastructure (SDI) to more integrated and scalable systems. This includes the development of geospatial knowledge infrastructures and the use of emerging technology like artificial intelligence and machine learning. In the last few years, the UNGGIM community has made considerable efforts to explore and develop the concept of geospatial ecosystems. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has already embarked 3 years program, the Saudi National Geospatial Ecosystem, which was also presented at the recent UNGGIM Arab States meeting in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. 66% progress has been achieved in the first year of completing the ecosystem program. Now is the time to discuss and gain insight from the wider digital ecosystem experts and their perspective of the role of the geospatial ecosystems in the more expansive digital arena. I am delighted to see a list of impressive and eminent speakers outside the geospatial communities. I would like to acknowledge that the work of the co-chairs of Canada, South Africa, and Saudi Arabia for their efforts in organizing this important webinar. The webinar deliberation will be valuable to inputs to the writing team work, which will in turn feed into the UNGGIM Center of Excellence for Geospatial Information Ecosystem, which will be inaugurated in Riyadh soon. I wish you all enjoyable and fruitful webinar. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you, Dr. Al-Sayel, for your encouragement, your elucidating words. We really appreciate your support. And finally, now we'll turn to a brief pre-recorded address from Ignacio Silva Santa Cruz, who is the Director of Emerging Technology with Chile's Ministry of Science.
Good morning. My name is Ignacio Silva, and it's an honor to be here today to talk to you about how Chile is driving the development of a transformative digital ecosystem. Digitalization is a key to addressing global challenges, enhancing the country's competitiveness, and creating opportunities for innovation and economic growth. In this short video, I will outline Chile's key initiatives in artificial intelligence, digital infrastructure, and emerging technologies. Chile has developed a national artificial intelligence policy, first published in 2021 and modified in 2024, which positioned the country as a regional leader in AI. This policy is structured around three key pillars. First, enable factors, digital infrastructure, human capital, and funding to support AI adoption. Second, development and adoption of AI, applications in key industries and public services. Third, regulatory and ethical aspect, ensuring the safe and responsible use of AI. The latest update to this policy expands on these areas by focusing on talent development, infrastructure improvement, public training, industry promotion, and the creation of a dedicated AI research fund. These efforts are crucial to maintain Chile's leadership in AI and ensuring long-term innovation and economic growth. The development of infrastructure is fundamental to digital transformation. Chile has made significant investment in three things. First, 5G networks. The deployment of 5G technology has achieved over 90% coverage in urban areas. Data centers. Companies like Google, Microsoft, and Huawei have established data centers in Chile, positioning the country as a regional digital hub. And third, optical fiber expansion. The National Optical Fiber Project aims to connect rural areas with high-speed internet. Emerging technologies. Recognizing the rapid evolution of disruptive technologies, Chile has established the Division of Emerging Technologies, which I have the honor to lead within the Ministry of Science, Technology, Knowledge and Innovation. This division will be instrumental in shaping the national strategy for quantum technologies and biotechnology, two areas where Chile is rapidly advancing. About quantum technologies, with increasing research in quantum computing and secure communication, Chile is working to become a regional leader by fostering innovation, talent development, and global partnerships. About biotechnology, capitalizing on Chile's rich biodiversity and a strong scientific foundation, biotechnology offers transformative potential in medicine, agriculture, and sustainability. By investing in these cutting-edge fields, Chile is not only driving technological progress, but also securing its position in the global knowledge economy, paving the way for groundbreaking advancement that will benefit society as a whole. In conclusion, Chile is leading digital transformation in Latin America throughout investment in AI, infrastructure, and emerging technologies. But technology alone is not enough. It's how we use it that truly drives change. For those who are listening to me here today, the question is, how can we use these tools to solve real-world challenges? Whether in healthcare, finance, or education, digital innovation must be both ethical and inclusive. Moving forward, collaborations between governments, academia, and industry will be the key. We invite you to be part of this transformation throughout learning, innovation, and responsible technology use. Thank you very much for your attention.
Fantastic. So thank you so much to each of the three distinguished speakers and their opening remarks. Very inspiring. I'd like to hand things over now to Mr. Almabrook with GEOSA as we proceed on the next agenda item, which is a short debrief on the work of our writing team and an overview on UNGGIM. Mr. Almabrook, over to you.
Thank you so much. Could you please share the slides from your end? Yeah, thank you. Greeting from Saudi Arabia, and I would like to welcome you once again to this webinar on exploring the wider digital ecosystem. Let me first provide you with a brief on our background. So the UNGGIM under the Economic and Social Council has a unique architecture aim to foster coordination and coherence in geospatial information management, which include member states, and the governance is carried by the co-chair as the Bureau and the 5 regional committee, and supported by 4 thematics networks who are observers. Next, please. So the program of works is carried by the committee of experts, which designated working groups at the global and regional levels. We meet regularly once a month, in a month of August as a committee of experts. And also we have our regional plenary meeting in the 5 regional spread across the year. The focus here a comprehensive dialogue, convey a global forum on the topic of geospatial supporting the UN goals. Next. Next, please. So here is the UN GGIM committee of experts have produced the UNGGIM global framework, terms here as the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, IGIF, which support other UN frameworks, including the UN SDG frameworks. Next, please. So the roadmap for implementing the IGIF occurs mainly through the 9 strategic pathways. The strategic pathways are purposely presented as spread pieces of jigsaw puzzle in recognition that there are many aspects and dimensions to each individual pathway, which can be addressed uniquely. However, it's when the pieces are all joined together and united as one that the framework is connected, integrated, and able to be fully implemented as the Integrated National Geospatial Information Program. Additionally, the strategic pathways are organized laterally in response to 3 principles area of equally shared influence. These begin aspects related to overarching international governance, the underlying data and enabling technologies, and the importance of people in the geospatial information life cycles. Next, please. So this slides present the decisions that taken in the previous at the UN GGIM. So in 2023 at the 13th session, a decision taken to identify the foundation of the future geospatial ecosystem, leading to the creation of the FGIE, the writing team. And the writing team here is consists of 13 member states and 2 thematic networks. They work together to develop a recommendation for the committee of experts in pursuit of vibrant and resilient global geospatial ecosystem. And we have a working program under the writing team, which are the global seminar held today and tomorrow, and the survey which will be launched on the 18th of April. And I will talk about it later today. And also the concept paper and presentation at the 15th session of the UNGGIM. It will be done in August this year. Thank you once again for your attention, and let me hand over the floor to Cindy. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Fabulous. And we will share the actual link to the most recent paper report to the Committee of Experts in the chat so that you can run your eye over it later or even during the meeting this morning. Now we'll get really, start getting into the journey of unpacking the principles for the Future Geospatial Information Ecosystem and hearing from our panel of distinguished speakers. First of all, let me turn the floor over to our colleague, Clinton Hyman. And Clinton will just share some information on the general thinking within the writing team, where we're taking the Future Geospatial Information Ecosystem before we start to unpack each of the principles. So Clinton, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy, and thank you, Mr. Almerbrook, the co-chairs of this writing group. I do appreciate the time that's been given to me for this. The first slide that we're going to look at here is why the ecosystem approach. And for us, when we look at the Future of Geospatial Information Ecosystem, we look at it as a non-rigid system. It's dynamic. It involves networking to shape policies, technologies, people, and institutions. And like any ecosystem, resilience depends on balance, and the balance between the control and openness, stability and ability, as well as innovation and continuity. When we look at the local to national to global, the geospatial ecosystem needs to function across multiple levels. Decisions that are made at a local level impact national policies, and the national strategies then influence the global frameworks. And this interconnectivity means that the ecosystem must be flexible, scalable, and able to respond dynamically to change. The ideas and innovation are like fertilizer and rain. The thriving ecosystem
Oh, we've lost Clinton. Let me just pick up the thread while we wait for Clinton to return. Like he was just saying, the concept of the ecosystem welcomes the notion that we can affect positive advancement and change as we mindfully build out that ecosystem. And excuse us while we wax slightly poetic, but that fertilizer and rain comes from our forward thinking, our innovations, and our attention to the principles that matter most to assure that equitable and fair environment. Of course, any natural ecosystem can also be disrupted. And those disruptions can affect change that alter that ecosystem, sometimes for the better and sometimes not. And any ecosystem needs to be capable of adapting to that change. In terms of a digital ecosystem, we certainly want to be ready for the disruptors, for the new change agents, for what comes in future, and adapt to it quickly to maintain that investment and to maintain the health of that ecosystem. Let's move on to the next slide, and hopefully Clinton will return to us. Unfortunately, with live and global events, these things happen. Certainly, what are we building upon? In the geospatial community, certainly we've collectively, as a community, a global community, spent decades and maybe even centuries between our national geospatial information agencies, most often located in national governments, building spatial data infrastructure, collaborating together to develop the standards and policies that make interoperable and interconnected infrastructures possible. We've grown along with the capacity of the internet. We've developed systems of systems and begun very successful integration and intersection with the wider digital community. We have frameworks that we've developed, as Mohammed mentioned earlier, particularly the Integrated Geographic Information Framework from the UNGGIM that is intended to push everyone forward at the same pace to realize the potential of the digital ecosystem. And of course, all this is very much driven by consumer and citizen demand for place-based information and services. And we've seen over the last 20 years especially, we've seen incredible advancements and innovations coming from the private sector and other organizations where they're using the data that we, not only the location-based data, but the data that we have at our fingertips now, thanks to modern technologies and data management, to drive location-based services, place-based information for the betterment of our communities. Next slide. What is our future geospatial information ecosystem? The team so far is recognizing that it is that live and changing network of actors, the users, policies and practices. And we've firmly decided that this ecosystem, as it grows, needs to be centered around purpose. It needs to deliver systemic reciprocity for mutual benefit for everyone involved. It's imperative for a balanced environment that we would have that level of mutual benefit, whether you're participating for the public good, whether you have a commercial intent, whether you're a citizen or a user making use of the services available. And we want the ecosystem to be equitable, inclusive, delivering on frameworks like fair, care, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course, we want to continue to bridge the digital and geospatial divide in our world's development agenda, equalizing opportunity across the board. And we recognize that this infrastructure, this ecosystem is constantly evolving, and therefore our work to sustain it needs to also be very, very resilient and change with in reaction to what's happening in the ecosystem. I'd like to just open up a poll here. What do you see, or what could be your role in a future digital ecosystem? Do you see yourself as a data provider? Are you a developer, innovator? Are you an investor? Are you a decision maker that relies on this information or these services? Or would you like to be able to rely on them? I'll take a few seconds to look at your responses. I see many data providers enthusiastically chiming in. Yeah, it is all about the data, certainly. And it's the key underlying ingredient to anything that we do. Yeah, and if you are in the chat, you'll see the spread here where we see those identifying as data provider, innovator, and decision maker, with some users, investors, developers amongst us as well. Just really illustrating the fact that the ecosystem is made up of a broad scope of interest and a broad scope of requirement and need, which is one of the reasons we wanted to reach out and start to, and all of the above. Yes, thank you, Mr. Cooper. Absolutely. That is very true. I don't think there's one amongst us who would not also identify possibly as a consumer of the digital ecosystem in this day and age. Wonderful. Okay, let's move on. I don't think unfortunately, Clinton has not rejoined us, so we'll just continue on with the next slide. What's driving us? We have touched on this, but certainly our focus in the geospatial realm is and has often been the need to source solutions to global issues, to global problems. That is driving us in trying to deepen the integration with geospatial, with the wider digital ecosystem. The need for equitable access to knowledge, this is key, absolutely essential as we move forward as a global community. There's a broad chasm, unfortunately, where we don't see that equitable access to different portions of populations in different areas of the world, perhaps. And we want to continue to be mindful of that and press forward with that. And bridging the geospatial and digital divide, incredibly important because bringing the ecosystem to bear on those global challenges, those local to global challenges, is a key driver for us to assure that those all around the world have access and are able to develop forward in a sustainable manner and keep pace with the rest of the global community for fairness and for our mutual benefit. Our next slide. What are we up against? It's a difficult moment. I think we'll all agree, and it has been a difficult moment for quite a while. The world's up against the existential threat of climate change. How do we adapt? How do we mitigate? How do we protect ourselves and our livelihoods and our families and our interests? There's disruptions. In some cases, very significant disruptions in the world political order, and the need for peace and solutions towards peace in our global community. We've mentioned the digital divide. Certainly that's something that we all continuously strive to overcome. In the digital ecosystem, more and more, we're seeing the unfortunate presence of nefarious actors and the proliferation of mis and disinformation. How does a healthy and resilient digital ecosystem resist that? How does it overcome? How does it assure that people can trust what they're seeing and interacting with in that ecosystem? And as Ingrid mentioned, we want to bear in mind those future generations. How do we assure that we're making the right decisions today and leveraging the tools at our fingertips in a way that will create a better tomorrow and a better world, hopefully, for those who are to follow. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, we want to move to a poll. What do you feel? And I see we already have some responses here. What do you feel maybe the most pressing threat today or to come in the wider digital ecosystem, not necessarily that geospatial realm, that geospatial space, but what do you feel may be a pressing threat? Certainly our list is not comprehensive. So we'll leave that poll for now. It will be continue to be open as we push forward. And now we begin to dive into the general principles and fundamental elements of what our team has identified so far as essential to a future geospatial digital ecosystem and its integration with the wider digital ecosystem. Next slide. Today, we're going to dive into the principles. As you can see here, there are 10 of them, and we'll give a brief description of each and invite our expert speakers to deliver their perspectives just generally on what they feel is of relevance and of import in the wider digital ecosystem, giving us the opportunity to benefit from their expertise and their experience in a range of different contexts and concerns to see what we can derive from their experiences and knowledge to apply to our work today. Next slide, please. Tomorrow we're going to, we'll be holding a second webinar, and I do invite everyone who's able to join us to do so. It's on the 19th of March, or potentially the 20th, if you're in time zones that are far ahead of Eastern Standard Time. And we will run through those elements and have, again, a roster of expert speakers who we're very much looking forward to hearing from in terms of those elements. We're going to dive right in to the first three principles. Let's begin by considering interoperability, automation, integration. Many of you who are familiar with national spatial data infrastructures and geospatial platforms will recognize these three principles as both essential and relatively mature. They're bolstered by decades, as I mentioned, of deep collaboration and standard setting by organizations like the UN, the Open Geospatial Consortium, and the International Organization for Standardization, or ISO. But the digital ecosystem as a live and evolving entity require these principles to be agile and responsive, and evolving to meet new requirements, to maintain technological performance, and to maximize the reach and impact of digital information. So what we're wondering now, are these principles ready to support a future and increasingly complex and integrated digital ecosystem? What might challenge or disrupt the efficacy of these principles in the future? Let's reflect maybe particularly on the principle of integration. It's not simply integrating data to achieve new results or insights, although that is something that we do, and that is a key value proposition for geospatial information and the wider ecosystems, bringing that geographic context, that geographic intelligence to our decision-making processes. But it's establishing and expanding those intersections between different areas of interest. For example, integrating geospatial and public health, integrating geospatial and financial concerns. That spurs the digital ecosystem forward. We want to hear from you on this. So what are the next frontiers that you see in the integration of digital information? Where could we bring things together to affect innovation and change? So please share your thoughts in the poll. You should see that appear in the meeting window. And as you reflect on that and respond to the poll, I'd just like to take a moment to introduce our first speaker today. It's a great pleasure to welcome our colleague Laurent Zarin, who is Scientific Affairs Officer and head of the UN SPIDER program. And thank you so much, Laurent, for your presence here today. We were hoping to see Ms. Ardi Halamini with us. Unfortunately, she is unwell and unable to join this morning. So extra thanks to you for your flexibility and for being here to speak to this interesting topic. So I will turn the floor over to you for a short 8 to 10 minute intervention from your part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I had to step in literally last minute. Our director really wanted to be with you today, and that's why we didn't prepare any presentation or any pre-recorded message. She was hoping to participate, but she's really very sick at home, so she couldn't make it. So I'm happy to come in and kind of share, of course, our perspective as an office and her views as well. And focus a bit more on the space side of things. So, of course, I'm coming from the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs, so that's what I will do. We want to stress here that the space-based technologies are a key pillar in this digital ecosystem that we talk about. And in that context, our role as an office is to build capacity and to support member states, strengthen institutions at national level, to use these technologies better, to make access to space-based data easier for them, and of course then convert some of that data into geospatial products that help decision-making, policy-making, and support sustainable development. So we work a lot on that front in building capacity of countries. We are taking an initiative now to improve the coordination of acquisition of space-based data and sharing that data within the UN system, but also with member states. That's a very important component and something we feel needs to be optimized so that this digital data, space-based data resources are more available to countries. And ultimately, there's also the aspect of space governance and space sustainability that is one of our key mandates and roles within the office. None of this access to space-based data and all the benefits that space-based data and also space-based communications, satellite communications bring would be possible if space is not something that's sustainable and there for the long term for all countries to access and use. And in that sense, since we are also referring to the Pact of the Future, the last but not least action within the Pact of the Future, that action number 56 in the Pact, actually refers to the importance of space sustainability and calls upon the UN Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space to do more in ensuring that space is available and sustainable for future generations. It is also calling on member states to organize a fourth United Nations conference on the peaceful use of outer space, what we call UNISpace. The last one we had was in 1999. A lot changed in the world since then, definitely in terms of space and the number of actors, both private and public, that are now in outer space, building and launching and providing access to these technologies. So it's about time that we have a next conference that we aim to have to take place in 2027. Serious challenges now, given the financial situation within the UN system, that we will have to look at and see how we can do that. But again, this is an action in the Pact of the Future, and we have every intention to follow up on that and work with the Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. So obviously, when we talk about the importance of space data in this digital ecosystem, we have to look at all these different constellations of satellites that are now being developed, built, launched. This brings us a lot more data in the next years. We are talking, of course, tens and hundreds of terabytes of data being collected from space every day almost. And the question is, how can we access this data faster, easier? What can we do with it? How can we ensure that 80% of that data is not just stored in some archives and never used? So in that sense, of course, we have to look at how this data can be easier structured, exploited, analyzed using the new emerging AI and machine learning technologies as well. And all this, again, leads to a need for building capacity of countries so that we can enable each country or each actor interested at national level to use these technologies, to have easy access to this data, often, of course, commercial in nature. So there's also costs to be considered and cost sharing and improving the licensing conditions, etc. These are all areas we have to look at more closely also as UN. Ultimately, we want to make sure that this data supports national priorities, that through satellite technologies, we have faster, easier access to data, both in terms of collecting it, but also transferring it, transmitting it, access to real-time Internet of Things, sensors around the world, to ensure that that data that we collect is useful and helpful for sustainable development related SDG monitoring and whatever comes after the SDGs. All these sustainable development related activities will need adequate real-time or near real-time monitoring that we are trying to ensure through making access to this data easier. So I think I'll stop there. Of course, we can talk a lot about the importance of space-based data and how it fits in the broader digital ecosystem. One last point is maybe the emergence of these digital twins that we are now seeing more and more as important going forward, building these accurate, very high resolution replicas of our world through using this space-based data and other geospatial data, and to ensure that these digital twins also inform policy making, forecasting, early warning, and all these other aspects of what we are looking at supporting member states with. So I see a lot of promise in developing these digital twins more for most of the vulnerable areas around the world. And we also take steps in that direction as an office and support member states in moving forward, partnering with private sector and data providers to make this easier and more accessible. So I think we can only encourage everybody who's participating, all the different institutions, to work together going forward. I don't think we can do this separately or individually. We need to kind of pool our resources and ensure that data is shared and accessible easier to everybody. We need to pool the knowledge, the technology we have access to, and this is how we can ensure that sustainable development that we all aim for. I stop there. I hope this was useful, and I will probably not be able to stay until the end, but I'm happy to take questions also online later. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Laurent, for your last minute and very welcome interventions here. I'm going to put a couple markers in what you just said in terms of what we'll continue to discuss later in the meeting. The notion of increased collaboration between private and public sector, a very, very important consideration, something that we need to work on collectively. The infrastructure for Earth observation in space now certainly relies on the private sector and their technological advancement and innovation. And that information, I would say, and we've seen it demonstrated now, especially with the growth of artificial intelligence, the wealth of data that's been captured over and around the Earth over the last almost 50 years, the deep and abiding archives of this information that can now be used in ways that we did not imagine when we first captured it is almost overwhelming. And it is a point of integration, a point where we can start to leverage that intelligence to address those critical issues today that we maybe didn't traditionally think would be a use case for satellite and Earth observation data. So wonderful. Thank you so much for your participation this morning. And we wish Ms. Hala Mini a quick recovery, and do let her know we are thinking of her. We will move on now to our next principal, the subject of our next principal and our next speaker. So we'll move on to sustainability. Let me just remark by saying a sustainable ecosystem, a digital ecosystem must also be a resilient one. An ecosystem subject to disturbances that can threaten its resiliency and impact its health, or alternatively can spur a new and fabulous tangent. We want the digital ecosystem to be robust and to grow in response to our needs and our wants. What is needed now to assure the ongoing health of and a sustainable digital ecosystem a year from now, 5 years from now? What do we need to be aware of and working on right now to assure that resiliency going forward? So if you could reflect on this and respond to the poll that you're seeing appear on your screen now, I will welcome our next speaker, Mr. Alexandre Caldas. Mr. Caldas is Director of Early Warning and Data Analytics at the UN Environment Program. We're absolutely thrilled to have Mr. Caldas with us today. Alexandre, there you are. How are you?
Thank you so much. First word of gratitude for inviting me and UNEP, but also in my other hat as part of the UN Geospatial Network and the share of the UN Geospatial Network. We really share this belief that the digital geospatial ecosystems are a cornerstone of the next wave of actually using geospatial for humanity. Let me try. I'm not sure you can see my screen. I think you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
Okay, so basically what I like today on this principle of sustainability is definitely to praise the fact that the UNGGIM community from the start elected these two big priorities, the digital geospatial ecosystem as well as climate resilience and environment. So, and it's not by chance that these two main priorities were elected by the whole UNGGIM community as a big priority. Why? Because most of the future will be dependent on sustainability. Most of the future will be dependent on resilience, on the capacity for early warning and established scenarios, and on that basis, protect people, places, and the planet. And that's why I bring here the UN Geospatial Network and the One Situation Room, because on that principle, sustainability, protecting people, places, and planet requires the integration of different systems coming from the 5 pillars of the UN, coming from peace, security, humanitarian action, human rights, international rule of law, and sustainable development. And that's my first key message. The only way to put together these digital ecosystems is by interoperating in federated platforms, these different pillars of the UN, of the private sector, of the civil society. So that's my first principle. Of course, this brings directly that we cannot have socio-economic societies without environmental dimension, without the sustainability dimension. And that's why, again, digital ecosystems can make available data on the different areas of the environment that go from floods, management, natural disasters, temperatures, the 1.5 degrees, go to the forest and deforestation and to marine plastics. And of course, here, we could say that we are ready. Environmental sector is ready to make this data available to intersect with the other components. This is an example of the projection of a marine plastics in the oceans. And of course, only by using geospatial ecosystems, we can up over time and for the projection of the future, how marine plastics will impact, of course, drastically all the coastal area. And then we can zoom in. I use the expressions from the different levels of global to the regional and then to the local, how these will impact different around the world. The UN environment has done a tremendous effort to establish the first pillar, which is integration of data. And in the last 5 years, we have come out with this idea of an integrated federated platform of the World Environment Situation Room, in order that we can have the different dimensions of biodiversity and nature loss, climate change and pollution all taken together. And we can bring the layers of all these different 3 dimensions from climate to biodiversity and pollution in order that we can support decision making and action on the base of that data. This is our platform, and I'll go in more detail to see how what I think will be a driver of sustainability over the next couple of years in every geospatial integrated ecosystem. A driver will be the capacity to anticipate, the capacity to have early warning, and the capacity to be prepared, to contribute to preparedness. Because unfortunately, and the world has taught us that the function of response to emergencies and response to events, is not enough to save people, to protect property. So we have to invest on early warning for anticipatory action, for preparedness, and then we have to invest in the closing the circle with the recovery, with Build Back Better. And that's how where UNEP has been investing, and our family of partners and allies have been investing. Basically, I'm going to touch what we are doing now in terms of early warning, and early warning seems to bring all these digital ecosystems together to analyze our atmospheric concentration together with the global increase in temperatures and the mean sea level rise are going. Of course, I can touch on each one of these points and will provide me projections of the sea level rise, projections of the yearly temperatures, projections of the carbon dioxide, and how all these things come together in order that we can anticipate, we can have early warning. We can only by investing in preparedness, we can be better prepared to respond, and then better prepared to recover and to build back better. That would be a very critical message I would like to say. And these, again, I'll go back to the beginning of the conversation. We can only do this together in working across the UN system. The digital platform of disaster risk, which is our most up-to-date platform on anticipating and having disaster risk indicators. I click on the disaster risk and I'll come to, I think, let me just click it here, live. The disaster risk platform was built using our networks of global resource information database centers, grids, together with UNDP, together with UNDRR, in order that we can provide for the 193 countries vulnerability indicators and disaster risk indicators. And this was launched in the last COP by UNDP, by these agencies that I referred to. And now we have a good collection of vulnerability indicators, disaster risk indicators for each and every one of the countries in each and every one of the regions. What is the challenge is to drill down deeper and zoom in even deeper, and then turn these into live indicators of vulnerability and disaster risk. Only by having these kind of digital ecosystems at this level, we are able to be more prepared, we are able to respond better, and then to recover and close the circle of disaster risk. I will stop here. Of course, this will mean always working in the different dimensions of climate change, of biodiversity and ecosystems, as well as on pollution. I would just like to finish by saying that this is a never-ending partnership effort. We just announced today that UN Environment is working together with the Zero Waste Foundation in order to build a knowledge hub on zero waste, and this brings us together, not only to the communities and the cities and a community-based, site-based level management of risk, but also on waste management, but also in the partnership side, to working together, of course, with other agencies such as UN Habitat and the whole agency. And I'll close by saying that you have these priority of digital ecosystems as all the support of the UN Geospatial Network, our 42 UN agencies, to work together with you in order that we can leverage how these can respond better and can become more sustainable. And I'll stop here and be available for any questions from the forum.
Thank you so much, Mr. Callis. We really appreciate your intervention this morning, and it's very, very exciting to see the work that's happening in the environmental program at the UN. I hear again the absolute clarion call of the need for more and increased collaboration across actors, across sectors, across domains. So that's very well taken. Audience, I would like to thank you for your responses thus far to our polls. I see that many of you are participating and answering the questions as we run through. Interestingly, what is needed now to assure the health of our wider digital ecosystem in future? I'm seeing really interesting responses here, not least a call for things like financial support, sustainable funding, regulation for artificial intelligence, security, very, very fascinating perspectives. And so I do encourage you to continue to respond to the polls. We're certainly going to be taking this input back and taking this under consideration as we move forward with defining and scoping the future geospatial information ecosystem. So thank you so much. Let's move on now to the principle of purpose-driven, which is one of our core principles and aspirations for a future digital ecosystem. It's unequivocally our motivation in nurturing a future ecosystem must be to assure positive social, economic, and environmental outcomes, reaching back to the motivators driving this work, those three key drivers: finding solutions to those global problems, assuring equitable access to knowledge, and bridging the digital divide in our global development agendas. This ecosystem should support use cases that bring these benefits to a global community, a local community, a regional community, and maybe all. And when you take it all together, cumulatively, those positive effects will be felt broadly. We want to hear from you on this. What's your purpose-driven use case for the digital ecosystem? What are you leveraging it for, or what do you want to leverage it for to affect these types of change? Share that with us through the chat, and I will introduce our next two speakers. We're very fortunate today to have two speakers leveraging the wider digital ecosystem for beneficial use cases in international development, and for healthcare. Let me first welcome Ashaki Goodwin, who is director at Public Foundation. Ashaki, I'll wait to see you appear here. There you are. Welcome. We're so grateful for your participation here today. So without further ado, I'll open the floor for your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and such a pleasure to see some familiar names and to be part of this really exciting and timely discussion on the wider digital ecosystem. And today, my remarks will be coming from the place of understanding what governments need to do, where small island developing states and developing countries are, and how can we navigate the evolving landscape of digitalization, finance, capacity building to drive sustainable and resilient development. The digital divide and its impact on SIDS, and it's something that, we have spoken about quite a bit for the last 2-3 decades, but I think it's important to set the context in this discussion today. SIDS and many developing nations face profound structural challenges from climate vulnerability, severe impact from external economic shocks, to limited access to global markets and capital. As such, these are factors that limit the potential growth of these countries. By extension, today, we want to explore some factors that can influence and drive sustainable development, namely digitalization, finance, and capacity building. And let me start with digitalization. While digital technology has the potential to transform these economies by strengthening evidence-based decision-making, the reality is that the digital divide remains a persistent barrier, and we cannot ignore that. In fact, many governments struggle with outdated regulatory frameworks, fragmented digital infrastructures, and a lack of investment in digital public goods, which constrain the potential to compile, analyze, and design strategies for decision making. These factors limit the ability of governments to leverage digital tools for governance, economic planning, and climate resilience. Consequently, internet penetration remains uneven, and digital literacy levels fail to keep pace with rapid technological advancements. The issue we face is how to remap from persistent barriers to sustainable facilitators. To be clear, these need to be tackled together to be effective. We need adequate fit-for-purpose infrastructural investment. We need adequate regulatory frameworks and capacity to utilize these effectively. So one cannot go without the other. We need a holistic intervention. Existing gaps will deepen inequalities rather than bridge them if we do not utilize this collaborative approach that I am speaking of and other speakers have mentioned. Now, quickly, some of the policy approaches that governments can look at, and that will be forward thinking as well. One is investment in digital infrastructure, and we cannot overemphasize that. Establishing a robust and inclusive digital infrastructure should be a top priority for our governments. This means expanding broadband access, promoting competition to lower costs, and leveraging regional cooperation to enhance digital connectivity. But we also need to bring in the private sector. We need to have public-private partnerships that can play a crucial role in financing this infrastructure development, particularly in remote and underserved areas. Are we reaching all of our communities? 2, strengthening digital governance and regulatory frameworks. Governments must craft policies that ensure data security, digital rights, and regulatory clarity for businesses and investors. Cybersecurity frameworks must be reinforced to safeguard digital transactions and personal information. Additionally, adopting open data policies that can foster transparency and innovation. And I want to also touch on digital transformation with financing strategies. In order for us to achieve digital transformation, we also have to look at that financing aspect. Digital transformation cannot be pursued in isolation. It must be integrated into national economic strategies that can connect digital investment to economic growth, climate adaptation, and financial inclusion. Governments should seek blended finance models, leveraging concessional finance, sovereign funds, and private sector capital to fund digital transformation. And the aspect that we cannot forget, capacity building and digital skills development. This is not a luxury. This is a must. Digital inclusion is not just about infrastructure, but also about people. Investments in digital literacy, technical training, STEM education must be prioritized to ensure citizens can meaningfully engage in the digital economy. Government should collaborate with universities, international development partners, many are on this call today, and private sector actors to establish training programs, but not one-off training programs, but training programs that can be sustained over a longer period to prepare the workforce for technology-driven future. Now, how do we link that with investment, information, and technology architectures? And as I suggested earlier, the success of digital transformation hinges on an interconnected ecosystem where investments in technology, information systems, and governance structures reinforce each other. Investment in real-time climate data systems can enhance disaster preparedness and resilience in climate vulnerable nations. And some of that work, foundations like the Public Foundation and with our partners on this call, we have started to do. Another thing, deploying blockchain and digital financial platforms can improve financial inclusion for small businesses and, importantly, underserved communities for them to access credit. And then utilizing AI and big data analytics that can support evidence-based policymaking, not just policymaking, but evidence-based policymaking, ensuring our governments are designing a targeted approach. And finally, looking at cost considerations and long-term sustainability. These should not be one-off or short to medium term, but long-term sustainability. How are we prioritizing investment? How are we prioritizing economic productivity and social impact? And also bringing in international collaboration. So we need to make sure at the table we have development banks, philanthropic organizations, and impact investors that are working together with governments to finance and provide technical support so that no country and no community will be left behind. In closing, Cindy and colleagues, digital transformation is not a luxury, but a necessity for sustainable and resilient growth. Governments and partners must act decisively. Now is not the time to claw back. We must embrace policies that integrate investment, technology, and human capital to create an inclusive digital ecosystem. Thank you, and I look forward to being part of the continued discussion. Thank you for having the Public Foundation on this important webinar. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you, Ashaki. Fascinating and very, very strong words that I think we all need to take to heart and remember and recall, especially today. I see a number of you have also responded to the poll, what's your purpose-driven use case? I'm seeing some really interesting and varied use cases here that reflect the needs that crop up in different sectors and areas of the world. So please continue to respond. I'm going to now introduce our next speaker, AJ Gupta. He is the board chair for health systems and also the chair of the Health Domain Working Group at the Open Geospatial Consortium. AJ, it's wonderful to have you with us here today. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts from the health headspace, if you will, on the digital ecosystem and where we take it in future. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Oh, it's very difficult to hear you. Sorry, AJ, is that possible to increase the volume?
Increase volume. Can you hear me now?
Not very well, very, very low. I'll just give you a moment to adjust and see what we can do.
Thank you. Can you hear me now, Cindy?
It's still really faint.
You know, this does happen from time to time. Sometimes the microphone just doesn't want to pick up my sound. But
it's better now. It's slightly better. It's still faint, but I think actually I don't want you to shout yourself hoarse. So, but we can certainly go forward with a few minutes of your very important insights, AJ. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, it is an honor to be here today to discuss how a robust digital ecosystem, one that fully embraces geospatial artificial intelligence, can drive progress towards both global health and the Sustainable Development Goals without sacrificing economic progress. We often think of health and wealth as being at odds, but in reality, they are intertwined. A health population leads to more resilient workforce and stronger economies, and economic progress enables better healthcare delivery services. By harnessing geospatial intelligence, we can make informed, cost-effective decisions that improve both. We already live in a world saturated with geospatial data. Every national census, every satellite image, every weather forecast is location specific, yet we often fail to apply geospatial analytics to extract the most valuable insights. Even more critically, we often overlook the spatial context of the data we do use, and in so doing, we miss out on life-saving and cost-saving opportunities. By fully integrating GeoAI into digital information systems, including digital health systems, we can better understand, predict, and mitigate health risks, ensuring proactive intervention rather than reactive responses. Let me highlight two examples that demonstrate this potential. Poseidon. We all know that plastic pollution is a crisis, but we rarely discuss its direct impact on human health. Microplastics are in the air we breathe, the water we drink, and even our bloodstreams. Global efforts overwhelmingly focus on the critical need to clean the environment rather than preventing exposure and addressing the health consequences. We're using satellite imagery, current ocean models, and environmental health data. Poseidon, our GeoAI-powered plastic tracking system, is able to identify where plastic pollution is accumulating now, where it will spread next, and which communities are at greatest risk of exposure, both today and into the future. By unlocking these insights, governments, researchers, conservationists, and public health agencies can predict and mitigate health risks from plastic pollution before they escalate into widespread crises. Another application of GeoAI is in disaster risk reduction, also an area where the UN has been deeply engaged. Extreme weather events ranging from hurricanes to wildfires, heat waves, floods, and droughts create not just physical destruction, but create a cascading health crisis that can last for generations. Yet emergency preparedness often relies on historical risk maps rather than real-time geospatial analytics that can anticipate health system vulnerabilities before a disaster strikes. Our GeoAI-based health risk index solutions can demonstrate how to use satellite and aerial imagery to assess environmental vulnerabilities, how to analyze population health data to identify the most at-risk groups, and even as the risk changes during the disaster response efforts. GeoAI techniques can also model health impacts to predict which healthcare facilities will be most affected by the disaster and where additional clinical manpower and medical resources will be needed, and how to allocate aid as and before the crisis unfolds. By shifting disaster response from reactive to proactive, GeoAI ensures that health systems, emergency response personnel, and communities are prepared before disasters strike, saving lives, resources, and billions in economic losses. Now, reactive responses will remain essential, but they are not enough to meet the scale and complexity of today's health and environmental challenges. Really, any challenge in advancing the human condition. Geospatial artificial intelligence fundamentally transforms our ability to predict risks before they become crises. And this shift is exactly, in my opinion, what the United Nations seek to achieve through its post-2030 development agenda. Reaction means responding to damage after it occurs. Prediction allows us to prevent suffering and reduce economic losses before they escalate. Reaction is costly. Disaster response, emergency medical aid, and environmental cleanups require massive investments, whereas proactive insights allow for targeted, cost-effective interventions. Reaction is limited by time and organizations, by time and resource levels. Once a health crisis unfolds, governments and aid organizations are often overwhelmed and play catch-up. Predictive geospatial analytics allows us to stay ahead of the crises, allocating resources efficiently. Geospatial artificial intelligence naturally leads itself to predictive modeling, making it a key enabler of sustainable digital transformation. The UN's Global Digital Compact highlights the importance of digital public infrastructure and data-driven governance. GeoAI is precisely the kind of technology that can operationalize this vision. And the spatial context is key. It is not enough to know who is at risk. We must also know where they are, how far they are from care, and whether the nearest hospital may be in a care desert or other disaster-prone area. It's not enough to map plastic pollution. We must connect it to the human exposure, understanding which communities are most affected, and how it impacts long-term public health. By unlocking the spatial context of the data we do use, geospatial AI allows us to identify risks before they become emergencies, develop cost-effective interventions targeted to the right locations and the right populations, and also to support data-driven policies that protect vulnerable groups before harm occurs. Now, the future digital ecosystem must also have a generative AI component. Geospatial AI provides key insights, but for digital solutions to be truly scalable, equitable, and impactful, they must be accessible to all, whether policymakers, healthcare workers, or the general public. We've seen that generative AI is revolutionizing how people in all walks of life interface with data and analytics. In our case, it allows everyone to interact with complex geospatial data, indicators, and risk indices through natural conversations, bridging the digital divide in a way that hasn't been done before, and making insights available without requiring specialized technical expertise. Of course, this can only happen if we get it right. Generative AI, especially in sensitive industries like healthcare, must not hallucinate, introduce errors, or reinforce bias. On this point, we all recognize bias as a negative. You can fill in any term you like. Now, and possibly for the first time ever, we, the general consumer population, can see bias in front of us in the privacy of our own homes, allowing us possibly the greatest opportunity we've ever had to truly confront and correct the problem of bias, conscious or unconscious. If we do this right, we won't just improve artificial intelligence, we won't just improve decision-making capacity across sectors, it will benefit mankind in countless number of ways. Now, in conclusion, the global digital ecosystem must not only collect data, but make it actionable. We already have vast amounts of geospatial data, and more is coming online every day. While additional data sources can always enhance insights, what we need right now is geospatial analytics that reveal hidden connections, allowing us to predict, prevent, and protect. Poseidon is one example, and our disaster health risk indices are a second, but the potential applications are limitless, from tracking infectious disease outbreaks to ensuring equitable access to healthcare resources. As we work towards a global digital compact in the post-2030 development agenda, let us recognize that geospatial intelligence is no longer optional. It is essential in building a healthier and more resilient world. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gupta. That was an amazing talk, providing a ton of insight into that healthcare and human health and well-being use case. From what I've heard from both yourself and Ashaki, we're really looking at assuring that the infrastructures, the tools, and the knowledge to use them need to be in place, and that we need to move forward to that more predictive and analytic viewpoint, that more real-time or ahead of event or anticipating event kind of mind frame. So to assure like a really successful integration of the use of geospatial information in attacking these types of issues. Thank you so much for that. And thanks to everyone who's responded to the poll on your use case for the wider digital ecosystem. Let's we're starting to flip a little bit on our time. I do want enough time to speak with all of our distinguished guests. I want to move directly to the next principle, which is transformation. Location is intrinsically wrapped up in conversations that touch transformative technologies that we've seen emerging, the sensor web, Internet of Things, blockchain, all these things dominating our thoughts. And now we're diving headfirst, as Mr. Gupta has just mentioned, into the realm of AI and generative AI. We can't stop transforming our own digital ecosystem, it seems, which is wonderful. And yet also we need to assure ourselves that we are taking those steps mindfully. So I'd like to open a new poll. What do you see as the most significant digital transformation over the next 5 years? If you could all reach for your own personal crystal ball and inform us, we would be so pleased. And while you do that, I'm going to introduce Sherman Vajmgir. She is the founder of Token Kitchen. Sherman, you are a noted thought leader in the token economy, in blockchain, and in the application of those technologies in the realm such as cryptocurrency and tokenized economies. I think these topics are highly relevant to the notion, especially of trustworthy data provenance. And we're excited to hear your thoughts from your own perspective on the wider digital ecosystem and its transformative nature. So Ms. Vajmgir, welcome, and over to you.
Hi. Thank you for the invitation. I'm just not sure how I can access the slides. Should I upload them myself? Because I had to send them in. Sorry for that.
Just
reach to our technical.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
And how can I go forward with the slides? Otherwise, I'll just share my own. Then I have full control. Okay.
As you wish. As you wish.
Yeah. Let me just. Okay. So thanks so much for inviting me. I know we're back in time, but I think we will be faster if I can share my own slides. I wasn't sure how to do this.
Use there's a share icon at the top of the screen. There we go. Yeah.
But I have to open, sorry about that. I'll be with you in a sec. All right. I was just confused with it's just taking a second. So I will be speaking about kind of the practical aspects of the 2-3 prior presentations we've heard. So just let me go on to full screen. Okay. All right. So I came to Portugal 2-3 years ago, and as I was working on my book Token Economy and Tokenization in developing practical use case with clients also, I bought this farm, which happens to have like this olive grove with several thousand olive trees, and started to apply my theoretical knowledge to to problems that farmers have today and problems we have as a global society when it comes to various SDGs. And basically, we call this project Monte dos Dados. The idea was to have this applied research farm and to create new revenue streams for farmers. So the question was, how can we, what has been mentioned before, combine tokenization with data science and to contribute or to resolve many issues that farmers have while contributing to many of the SDGs, especially when it comes to creating publicly verifiable sustainability proofs. Like how can we create tokenization to create kind of incentive tokens for maintaining or preserving soil quality, improving water retention or maintaining water retention, biodiversity, wildlife protection, on top of CO2 certificates, which are basically the only public good today that have some kind of market value. The idea was that, or the crunch that we saw ourselves in was that I am a farmer of trees. I have olive trees. So in our classical economic system we live in today, a farmer only has crop yield, basically. I can sell the fruits of the tree. I can log the tree and sell the wood. This has a market price. It's a private good with a market price. I might get some subsidies on top. I might get a bit more subsidies if I do ecological farming, but it's a joke. You crunch the numbers and I don't even cover my costs. I'm cross-financing through more profitable activities like writing a book and consulting, etc. My farm here. And that shouldn't be the case, because obviously it's an creates bad incentives for traditional farming. So the question was, how can we incentivize the preservation of primary ecosystem services, biodiversity, soil quality, water retention, on top of CO2 capture and O2 production? Unfortunately, the market only incentivizes the production of private goods. There is no revenue streams for the production of public goods like clean air, water, wildfire, etc. The only incentive, as I said, that we have is like through the back door of CO2 certificates, or I'm sure you know, the increasing attention to CO2 plus certificate that include a little bit of maybe biodiversity protection, but how do we measure this? And because we can't give value to something we cannot measure. So this was the starting point. And I already had that idea in the back of my head when I bought this farm. And sure enough, when I bought it, the first thing that a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people told us, neighbors, bigger farmers, it's like, log all your trees. They're too old. It's too hard to harvest, and plant new ones. And I was like, oh my God, we cannot do this because I have like 2,500 olive trees that are over 100 years old. They have root systems so deep that even if it doesn't rain for a year or two, they don't die. They might not bear fruit. Sometimes they even bear fruit in spite of the fact that we might not have a year with little rain. Not only because they're old, but also because it's on a hill that is terraced. So when it rains a lot, the soil doesn't erode, it doesn't wash away. But of course, it's harder to harvest, which is why we were told to log those trees. But as you can see in this picture, if we were to log those trees and plant new trees, on this picture, unfortunately, the quality isn't very good, but you see like around 5-6-year-old trees, and you can't start harvesting, or 4 or 5-year-old trees, and you can't start really producing meaningfully until year 5, and really productive until year 10, and it needs a lot of fertilization and water. So the externalities of logging old trees just to have to plant new ones are crazy, but unfortunately our incentive systems are like that. In Europe, we have incentives for planting new trees, regardless whether or not we logged older trees before that. So something's really wrong. So the question was, how can we create something we would like to call proof of olive tree as a natural way to combat climate change? So how can we prove that an olive tree that's old is still there? What is the value of an old olive tree in terms of O2 production, CO2 production, and the type of farming, and what are the ecosystem services we can attribute to this? And how can we measure that in a publicly verifiable way? Yeah, I'm going to skip this. You know, we have, as I said, the carbon markets, we have challenges with carbon markets. Blockchain networks can be a solution to creating more transparency and combating carbon bandit stuff. But this is, unfortunately, sustainability is too carbon centric. So while we can resolve some of the issues that carbon markets have today, maintaining this path of being carbon centric thinking when carbon is really the downstream problem of everything, this is something we can only combat by measuring other ecosystem services. So the question was, what kind of proofs do we create and how do we create it, based on what kind of data, using technologies, and what kind of technologies, and what kind of proofs? It could be like general ecosystem services, proof that the tree exists, proof of water retention, biodiversity. Some proofs are easier, that the tree exists. You can do that with geospatial data, for example. You can do that by tagging an olive tree. Other things like water retention, biodiversity is already harder. CO2 capture might or might not have more exact data based on the scientific data available. We can't go into the details. So tokenization of ecosystem services is not a new thing in the blockchain space. There's been, or regenerative finance space, many projects that have been try to tackle the problem of sustainability or incentivizing sustainable practices by some kind of purpose-driven token. So there are many projects out there, but it's still very early on, I guess. So I'm trying to wrap it up because we don't have too much time. We bounced some ideas like, how can we identify a tree if we want to create proof of olive tree? So we could tag it with a crypto accelerator, give it a wallet, given blockchain identity to each tree, create an asset address for that tree, the existence like a blockchain address for that tree, and then start applying other types of sensors, drones, sensors in the soil, sensors in the air, taking pictures, measuring soil quality data, water retention data, etc. But then the question is, where do I put the sensors? What do I measure? How often do I measure it? Which tree do I attribute this? So while I can apply technology, how we apply it and how we evaluate that data is a complex question that integrates technology but goes far beyond it. So the idea was to create a combination of hardware data, what we call in the blockchain world hardware oracles, human oracles, expert data, software oracles, correlate that data to each other and try and generate some kind of sustainability proofs, because with data we can give value to an asset or a service. Yeah, so we're still very early on, or we got stuck in the, very early on in this concept and research phase of what do we need to measure, how can we measure it, how do we evaluate it, and which kind of technologies do we need, the combination to create these publicly verifiable proofs, combination between blockchain networks, hardware wallets, and AI tools. But really, we have to collaborate with scientists and then also with organizations like you guys, UN organizations and other international organizations, because a lot of it is about culture and drum making. So unfortunately, as for the project, it's on halt now for personal reasons. There was just no bandwidth and capacity and some other things that happened here on the farm. Yeah, I've been working with some other global organizations also on some use cases, similar use cases. As for other purpose-driven tokens, I've also written about this in my book, Token Economy, and one is specifically one part of the book, or one volume is on DAOs and purpose-driven tokens. So if you're interested, there are many use cases also in the book. I would like to say more, but I think we're at the end of it.
I so appreciate your time with us, Ms. Boschminger. Very fascinating insights into incentivizing the public good, and then the tokenization and tracking of that good, really giving us something to think about. And I thank you so much for your presentation this morning. We'll move on to the next principle, which is inclusivity, or inclusive. We've already noted with some emphasis this morning or today that a key driver of our work is closing the digital divide and assuring equitable access to key information and technology that enables everyone to move forward in a mutually beneficial way. But what does this all mean in an ecosystem where the artificial intelligence is already playing such a large and growing role? How do we pursue the principle of inclusivity in good faith with diverse perspectives and values replete in the ecosystem, and to assure that all communities can leverage its benefits? How do we ground the future digital ecosystem given the inequalities that exist already and that we're maybe struggling with already today? With this next poll, please consider, as technological advances like AI leap forward, who or where are the underserved in terms of the digital ecosystem? While we think about that and respond, please allow me to introduce our next distinguished speaker, Ms. Shingai Manjengwa. She is the lead for AI education and development at the Quebec AI Institute, MILA. Ms. Manjengwa, recognizing your extensive expertise in many forward-leaning topics in AI, including its governance, its responsible use, understanding and combating its inherent bias, and supporting equity, diversity, and inclusion as we continue to advance our application of AI. We're so happy to have you with us here today to hear your thoughts on these issues. So please, I turn the floor over to you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And I see we're also sharing, but I might also choose to share myself. I think that's going to be easier if we do it that way. So just checking, are you able to see the Mila screen?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So hello, everybody from wherever you're joining. Cindy, thank you for the kind invitation to join this group today. Following on from what we've heard from previous speakers today, I actually wanted to share some concrete examples about what artificial intelligence bias looks like and what it means for all of us, regardless of the data sets that we're using and the work that we're doing. So we're going to talk a bit about bias, and I'm just going to jump in and show you examples. And then I've got a slide on some mitigation strategies, but this is really dipping a toe in the mitigation. And it's really a call for broader education and discussion that we may actively look into how bias can occur and what we can do to mitigate it. So the first use case I have for you is a case study I used in a course that I was teaching at the Vector Institute about bias. And this one was at Georgian, and it's a case study. Turnitin is a popular software that's used to detect cheating in assignments. So students upload their homework assignments, and the software tool determines whether there was plagiarism or some other forms of cheating in the text. What the team building this tool found was that it had a higher rate of false positives for non-native English speakers. a higher rate of false positives for non-native English speakers. So that means that if somebody was a non-native English speaker, perhaps in the way they type, that became apparent to the large language model doing the assessment, then they were more likely to be flagged for cheating, even if they were not. Now, this was detected before it was, before the tool was deployed to the general public, and we applaud the team at Georgian for being open about an instance like this and what they were able to do to mitigate the issues. But fundamentally, this can happen, and you can imagine the impact is more far-reaching than being accused of cheating. Even if somehow we could get to the truth that it was an algorithm that made a mistake, your reputation is tarnished. And the next assignment that you submit, perhaps your professors are reading it a bit more closely just to make sure that you did it yourself. So that's our first example. Our next example is also took place at the Vector Institute. So there's a big Slack group. And just to take a step back, what is the Vector Institute and what is MILA? These are AI institutes that were created as part of the Pan-Canadian AI strategy, which was a coordinated effort by the Canadian government to fund and develop responsible artificial intelligence talent, as well as developments and entrepreneurship. So I have had the privilege of working at the Vector Institute, and now I'm at the Mila Institute, led by Joshua Bengio, and who's our chief research scientist. And of course, Jeffrey Hinton is the chief research scientist at Vector. And I've had the privilege of working at both institutions. So while at Vector, somebody posted in our Slack group that our new coffee machine was uniquely, it had a unique challenge that if you had a dark colored mug, if your mug was a dark color and you put it under the coffee machine would not detect the mug and you could not use it. But the person who posted this said, but there's a hack. If you wave your hand, I don't know if you can see this hand down here. If you wave your hand under the sensor, then the coffee machine will recognize your hand and it will dispense the coffee. So I responded to the group, and this is a group with many researchers, and I said, well, what if your hand is dark too? And then the person responded, do not engage, the machine will explode, I will come and help you, just shout and I'll come and sort it out, which is obviously a joke. But it was the beginning of a much bigger conversation, and the multiple researchers reached out to me and said, wow, Shanghai, this is an incredible learning opportunity where a sensor cannot pick up a dark color. Are the manufacturers of the sensor racist? No, but the sensor could be applied in multiple different technologies where the net effect is that somebody with my skin tone could not engage with this particular piece of technology. Next, here is an example that I use in a course that I teach for public servants. It's called the AI Policy Compass through the Mila AI Quebec Institute. And this particular use case we developed for Transport Canada. And what it is an exercise where we provide our participants the code, and they have the option to just hit run on the code. We don't expect everybody to learn Python during the course, but certainly that experience of interacting with the model gives you the real-time impression of what it feels like, this new godlike status that AI developers have, where you can create a tool and deploy it, and then it is used by the general public. But what we're teaching in this particular use case, in this particular exercise, is that pixel density thresholds matter, right? That's a play on words. You've all heard the term Black Lives Matter, but in this case, I'm saying pixel density thresholds matter. Why? Because in this particular AI model that's commonly used all over the world to detect whether a parking space is free or whether it's being utilized, is dependent on this little variable in the code called pixel density threshold that determines what is the right number of pixels to determine whether there's something in a parking space or whether there isn't. Now, what is something? It could be a bird, it could be a shopping trolley, it could be a person, right? It could be a small child. And depending on what they look like, that pixel density, whether they are darker in the picture or whether they're lighter in the picture, that is what determines whether or not this particular model can see them. Now, I also want to highlight that it's not just about the model itself. If this is dependent on, let's say, CCTV footage or other types of cameras that are inputs, data inputs for this particular model, the quality of the camera and whether it's pixelated and it can see me is also going to be a factor in how successful this model is going to be. Now, right now, we don't have measures for who is creating these models. We don't have standards for that. Certainly at the institutes that I'm part of, we have PhD researchers and students in machine learning master's degrees, and there's an education process and pipeline to get students through this. And one of the interventions that we try and have with these students is this notion of responsible AI, that as for them, it might just be changing the number from 100 to 900 in their model, but creating that awareness that this can have broad reaching impact in society when you deploy a tool like this. What does it mean when AI cannot see you? So this is a picture that was taken a number of years ago. It was at the G20 summit, probably 2017. I was representing Canada with a number of entrepreneurs with my startup at the time, Fireside Analytics, an education company. And with a group, we were taken for trade visits, and our role was to provide a communique for the G20 leaders around what we could do to improve entrepreneurship for our cohort and for a broader community in our ecosystem. And so part of this trade mission, we went to visit different centers of excellence. And this particular building had a session where you walked in and a camera would detect you, and then it would predict your age, and it would predict your gender as well. And so we walked in, and if it's visible to you, there are squares around my colleagues, including one of my colleagues at the back. And this AI tool just didn't detect me at all. And I could have done star jumps in front of that camera to try and get it to recognize a person standing in front of it, but it could not. And so once again, I'm smiling. This is very serious topic. I'm smiling here because it is also an opportunity for us to teach and to learn. Because very simply, the training data that was used in this model to detect what a person is perhaps didn't have somebody who looked like me, right? So there are multiple factors here, right? Because we have to determine, well, what features does an AI model, a machine learning model, need to look at to determine what a person is? Is it hair? Is it the color of their eyes? Is it, cherry lips? Is it rosy cheeks? What are those characteristics that the AI model ends up looking at where it can come up with, it is unable to recognize a person who doesn't match those characteristics? So this is, when we talk about bias in artificial intelligence, I really just wanted to make it concrete for you so that it's not some theoretical idea that's happening somewhere else. All the tools that we are developing with artificial intelligence will be impacted certainly by the data that was used to train them. And if that data was not representative of the community where this tool will be used, then we will likely have instances like this. And more broadly, imagine a system like this deployed in a self-driving car, right, in an autonomous vehicle. What are the implications for me and people that look like me when that vehicle is then, put out into the world and it doesn't recognize certain people? Now, you might say, oh, but Shingai, I work with different types of data, space data, it doesn't really, this is an interesting talk, but it doesn't really affect me. Well, what we're learning with AI agents is that AI agents, the definition really is software that leverages artificial intelligence tools. And maybe it's language tools, maybe it's image tools, but it's so deeply embedded in there, you just open your phone with your face and you're not even aware that there's artificial intelligence at play there. Or you interact with a chatbot and it gives you what you need and you don't even think about the training data that was used. So there's an interconnectedness with these AI software tools and these data sets that we use to train them that is now becoming invisible to us. It's now embedded in the systems, which is why we need to go a step further in thinking about bias. The next one is simply, well, where does the data come from that is used to train these vision models? Why is it that they don't recognize Shingai? Well, these data sets can come from multiple places. But in this particular, in this time where the large language models are the most popular ones, majority of that data came from the internet. Right, from different websites and different tools on the internet. Now, something to remember about the internet is that the search results that we get from search engines are ranked by algorithms based on clicks and popularity and a number of other factors. So if I type in woman, we're just having a conversation about why did the algorithm not recognize me as a person, let alone able to identify my gender and my age. well, what does the internet know about what a woman is? What does this algorithm know about what a woman is? And if we use that data to train an AI system, what does that AI system learn about what a woman is? This is a search engine called DuckDuckGo. If you type in woman and you go to images, I did this, I refresh this often, but this one in particular I did this week, and you type in woman and you look at the images, these are the images that come up. And so it's not a big stretch to say, well, if we take these images as possibly what was used to train AI systems, then the consequence is that AI systems learn that this is what a woman is. And someone who does not fit this, I'm going to call it homogeneous, for lack of a better word, the sort of homogeneous appearance of what a woman is therefore not recognized as a woman, or in the case of the previous example, a person at all. So beyond that, there are social implications where, okay, fine, this is based on the internet. This is just how it happened. Let's go to the next one and say beautiful face. So if we want to look at what does society think about what beauty is and how it's reflected, these are the images that come back to us. So once again, I will broadly call them homogeneous. Now, our children are using these tools in their, in their day-to-day activities. We are using these tools in our day-to-day activities, and this information is being embedded in artificial intelligence systems everywhere that are learning from these data sets. It's important to note that even in Johannesburg, South Africa, if you do the exact same experiment with multiple different search engines, you are going to end up with the same results, the same homogeneous group of results, whether the population there, 70% of the population looks more like me or looks more like the people on the previous screen. So what do we do about bias? Well, there are multiple ways that we can try and address bias, and I would not do this topic justice. It's a huge topic, and we teach it extensively at multiple different levels. But just to give you a feel for the types of bias that can be there. The main one that I've highlighted today is really the data bias, where the examples that we show algorithms for what a thing is, in order for that algorithm to be able to predict that thing in an environment, that historical data is pivotal, and largely the consequence of where we see bias is because of the historical data. There's also algorithmic bias, right? Where if we prioritize certain things in the algorithm, like accuracy, or we prioritize, so let's say we say, 87% accuracy is adequate for our needs. Well, if it's a cancer detection tool that I can take a photograph of my hand, and the tool, this AI tool, is supposed to be able to tell me whether some spot on my hand is cancerous, potentially cancerous or not, then 87% accuracy is no longer good enough. Right. So there are multiple use cases, and in Canada we have the algorithmic impact assessment tool, which helps people determine, can I use this tool, or the extent that I can use this tool, and some of the considerations around bias and hallucination that even some of my previous speakers covered today. There's interaction bias, where we're now using reinforcement learning methods. Reinforcement learning is where the more you use the chatbot is learning from the interactions, and those interactions become inputs to the chatbot, and ultimately together the chatbot keeps improving based on usage. Well, that's a good thing potentially, but it also has challenges in that if we have biases, then those biases go straight back into the model. So it is statistically accurate potentially that majority of nurses are female, potentially, right? That could be a statistically relevant observation in a population, but at the same time, if we train the model, that's so deeply entrenched in the model. That means when the model encounters somebody who does not fit that description and they are a nurse, then the model may give them incorrect information about career advice or even the jobs that they should potentially be applying for. And then there's context bias. Context bias is simply that the data and the context that the model was trained in is different to where the model will be deployed. Very simply, some of the images that I showed you of woman, just that search term, if that's the data used to train a vision model, think about what that would mean in an Arab country, for example, or a more conservative country, right? It would be totally different than based on the data set that was collected from a Western context. So there are multiple ways that bias can manifest. What do we do about it? Well, the way that we collect data and the way that we do our pre-processing, right? The way that we determine what data is used for the training is certainly one of the places where we can start. We also want to pay attention to our model development. We want to pay attention to the criteria that we set for success for our model. Is it just accuracy, right? Also, the evaluation of the model. So are we saying that 87% is enough, good enough, and in what context? In a health context, that may not be acceptable. In a social context, that might be fine. And then deployment and monitoring, right? This is where I see the biggest sort of common sense measure that we can have is at that point of inference, at that point where a human user is interacting with AI. We truly must have ways in which to provide feedback to the service providers and the builders of the AI so that they know that we're having these particular types of challenges, given the diversity of the ecosystem and the diversity of users interacting with AI systems. So at the end of the day, the message I would ask you to take home is this is education and continuous monitoring. We cannot take our foot off the pedal on the bias story now that we've seen some real examples, and there's so many more, some visible and some completely invisible to us at this point, given the accelerated rate of AI development and how it's being embedded in tools. We cannot afford to take our foot off the brake if our goal is inclusivity, if our goal is for artificial intelligence to serve everyone. So very simply, the last message I would leave with you is never stop learning. We cannot afford to take our foot off the pedal. And with that, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Benjingvad. That is very appreciated. 100% behind the notion that we cannot stop reaching, and we need to continuously learn to consider the implications and then the potential outcomes of what we're doing. I can speak to the use of the development use of artificial intelligence in the geospatial space. We're already very well advanced there, but we still do need it. We think of geospatial information as quite neutral in a sense, but we still do need to assess those algorithms and really think critically about how we build those models and what those processes in computer vision, generative AI, and so forth really do uncover, and where that might lead us. And do we need to really be careful there? Yes. So thank you so much for that. Thanks everyone for your responses on where are the underserved in this digital ecosystem, especially with regards to a rapidly advancing technological solutions like artificial intelligence. Is very interesting. I do apologize to everyone just because we have gone over time. We have one more speaker, and I do beg your indulgence. Hopefully you'll be able to remain with us a little longer. Unfortunately, our speaker on the notion or the principle of collaboration, Simon Hodson, he has had technical issues this today and is unable to join at this time. Hopefully we'll have a chance to hear from him later. However, we have touched quite significantly on the notion of collaboration and the need for it amongst sectors, amongst thematic areas, and amongst actors in the overall ecosystem. So I think if we could just, if you want to share your thoughts on, to you, what would be the most important factors for successful collaboration in a digital ecosystem, we would really appreciate that. We definitely want to then take that under consideration, and I think we'll move forward to the final two principles. If we can just, and apologies, Simon, if the issues are on our side. That's unfortunate, and we do certainly apologize and hope to hear from you at a later date. Right now, we'll move to the notions of agility and reliability in the ecosystem. The notion that a digital ecosystem should be reliable does seem obvious. An environment where one can rely on trustworthy information and open, safe, and secure interactions is really important. Equally important is the agility of that reliable system to allow for growth and incorporation of new trends and technologies. As you'll recall, earlier in the webinar, we noted the digital ecosystem can be disrupted. by new policies, by disruptive technologies, by changes to governance, and so on. So the digital ecosystem needs to be able to, needs the ability to adapt dynamically to these changes, even though it's difficult or really impossible sometimes to predict what and when these challenges may come along. Considering this, I want to invite you to respond to our last question with regards to the principles. What's required to ensure the digital ecosystem can swiftly and ably respond to evolving needs and novel and maybe not ideal situations? With that, I'm really pleased to introduce our last expert speaker for today, Mr. Randall Billy. Mr. Billy is the Director of Global National Government Sector at Esri. The private sector, as we have discussed, plays a very large and influential role in the continuous development and growth of a wider digital ecosystem. And the private sector, our private sector partners have demonstrated time and again how to pivot when confronted with challenge and change. Sometimes it is itself the one being that it's often the one actually being the disruptor that pushes us to new heights. Mr. Billy, thank you for being with us, and thank you for and apologies for the extended time frame here, but we are very interested to hear your thoughts on the wider digital ecosystem from this lens of reliability, agility, or any of the other principles that we've touched on already today. With that, I'll hand it over to you for your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Let me know, I've just taken control, and please let me know if you can see the screen, just because I've shortened the presentation by a few slides just to make it flow a little bit better.
Yes, we can see it.
So I do appreciate the opportunity to join you on behalf of Esri. You know, I really enjoyed the last brief on the bias in AI and the one previous, AJ, on talking about health, because I think health is a great example of building out an infrastructure to support kind of this continuation push into the public health community. I think what we saw in COVID was this need resonating across the world for the use of geospatial information to help convey a story. And, I'm really going to talk to two aspects of this idea of scalability and reliability on bringing out this, building out this infrastructure. I'm going to talk very loosely about technology, probably less about the technology than you would expect as a technology vendor. I want to talk more about the communication around it and how we talk about it when we engage with national government ministers, and we are advocating for the programming and budgeting to build out these capabilities for all. So many of you know Esri. We're very high on visuals, so we have a few slides that hopefully will catch your eye, but also convey a message. And at the heart of the technology we build is this concept of geography. And we are an enterprise IT company, but we apply the spatial temporal lens across data, across the organization, across your national enterprise, what have you. And it gives us a unique take on how to build out evidence-based decision-making. I think Ashaki earlier from Public Foundation talked about this need. And many of us at Esri are here because we believe that science or evidence-based decision-making makes for better governments. And, I think it's important to say that, this idea of geography is a way to convey need, requirements, mission, and where we can all kind of coalesce and get behind. And our founder, Jack Dangerman, talks about this idea of maps being the language of geography, because it's about, how do you address the needs of today, across a very changing global landscape of climate crisis and natural disasters and political unrest. Geography is that linchpin, that what we call the steel thread that kind of leads through the conversation. And it's how do we take that and represent the real world digitally that we can build better government on. And I won't insult anyone here talking about what GIS is, but just know that, as we build out geospatial capabilities that once started to be very project-based and have become more organizational, and then kind of this idea of creating this digital geospatial infrastructure, we tend to call it, integrated geospatial infrastructure. I know many call it GKI, or geospatial knowledge infrastructure. And traditionally it's NSDI, it's National Spatial Data Infrastructure. But really it's about, building a system of systems that allow us to very easily discover data, aggregate it, serve it out to downstream populations. And regardless of where you kind of sit in that ecosystem, they all interact, because this is the idea of the data content providers that Laurent spoke about earlier when he was talking about the Office of Space Operations. But ideally, bringing these organizations and their content and their services together. And maybe these are analytical services based on, generative AI or more traditional geoprocessing services. These are about exposing those to the community of interest and using that to drive decisions, make across government, to, for sustainability development. I know we broadband access was mentioned earlier. We are supporting a number of efforts across the Africa and the Americas, where we are looking at, trying to objectively look at broadband access in order to, improve close the gap, I guess, to ensure everyone has seamless access to the internet and the opportunities that it affords, right? And this idea of, organizations that need to share open and secure decision-ready content and want to engage with their communities. And when they are interconnected, this new pattern evolves, that this idea of data providers, data consumers working together, creating value to kind of build economy on. And that's really this model that we've developed. And, I've gone in and sat down with ministers of digital transformation or ICT across organizations. And we have this general model we use to communicate the value proposition in building out geospatial infrastructure. So it begins in the foundation. Where are we with the authoritative data providers? And we believe it's actually very important with this, with so many commercial data providers out there. It's important for a country to establish who the authoritative data providers are. And traditionally, that's things like your topographic charts, your national cadastre, it's maritime or aviation charting information. It's your administrative boundaries at both the national and subnational levels. That's your place names. But we look at it more broadly. It's also things like environmental data. It's your weather, dynamic information. It's the census information collected through your decennial census and your business or agro census, in the out years. It's your baseline imagery. This becomes the foundation data that you can drive all of government on. And so that's your system of record. And so it's important that many of these organizations have invested in spatial capabilities, but the idea is to broaden that up, to pull that together. And so this is the concept of NSDI, the spatial data infrastructure, where you have a single clearinghouse, a metadata registry where the data, the services are registered, they are made discoverable through advanced, search techniques and published to downstream consumers. And those consumers can be private sector, commercial interests, can be your individual citizen, or it could be NGOs working in the space. But more often than not, we're talking about this idea of this authoritative data being published and consumed by other government agencies that are in some ways taking that information and creating insights out of it. Or those government consumers are working with the authoritative data providers to build value-added data or services. And then it becomes this loop of interaction where the consumers are influencing the authoritative data providers. In many cases, they're co-creating new data and services. As David Henderson would say out at the Audit Survey UK, great term, this idea of co-creating content. But many countries will have open transparency laws where they will publish out this information because they have compliance issues. Others will look to monetize that authoritative data in many different ways. And so there's different ways to kind of talk to the need for investing in the spatial data infrastructure. And I'm happy that if anyone's interested, they can have these slides, they can use them, play with them, maybe extended to meet your particular requirements in your next conversation. One of the areas that we've been very active with supporting the UN GGIM and the broader UN system is in the SDG goals reporting. And so with our partners at Public Foundation, the SDG Alliance and others like SDSN have been building technologies and solutions to make it very easy to kind of aggregate content across the national landscape and to surface that into a common reporting theme. And so kind of going back to this idea of connecting communities, this is really what we want to achieve with the underneath the SDG Alliance is, nations, or in some cases at the subnational level, large municipalities and even states or provinces using SDGs to assess their maturation as a society, aggregating that data up into a single SDG data hub network. So, you've got different examples here on the upper right. You've got national country portals. You've got UAE, Mexico, Ireland, and their GeoHive is an amazing example of putting the SDG reporting into practice to build economy on. And then the subnational level, things like Aloha Challenge, which is the state of Hawaii, or like in Guam, where they're using it to make those local decisions. So, this idea of we are creating this interconnected network to make informed decision making. It's a pretty powerful concept today. And I did shorten the brief up a little bit. I just want to really kind of convey this idea of the importance of investing in the geospatial infrastructure, using it in the conversations that you have with your peers and your stakeholders about the importance and the value that it can return, because we do believe that, we build the community based on the Geospatial Foundation. Now at Esri, I'm very fortunate to lead our international government sector portfolio, which is the engagement with all international governments, as well as our GIS for Good. So that is our global education and our global nonprofit, our support for NGOs and the international orgs and systems like the UN. And what we as a company talk about is the need that education and our work with NGOs is really the foundation that we build and do capacity building for everything else. So without that infrastructure in place to support the outreach and education, we can't be successful. You can't be successful in your efforts to kind of move your economies forward. So Cindy, that was kind of short and brief, but I was definitely aware that we're short on time.
Thank you so much, Randall. Really appreciate that. We have, it was short, but very impactful, thought-provoking. I appreciate it. I appreciate you staying till the end for the opportunity to participate. We have two more short polls that will run as we turn to my colleague and co-convener, Mohammed Al-Mabruk, once more, just to speak to the follow-on of this work that we're undertaking within the writing team. First, I'll ask you if you could simply move forward, Guillaume, to the next slide. Thank you. Just wanting our participants today, now that we have unpacked the 10 or so principles that we proposed for a future geospatial information ecosystem, that you reflect and weigh in on what are the two principles that we've discussed today that are most essential to a future geospatial information ecosystem, and also the broader digital ecosystem. What spoke to you? What resonated? You can please answer that. And then also the second poll that you can consider as we wind up the session, what might be missing? What might we need to subject to further consideration in terms of core principles for the ecosystem? Please remark on that too in the second poll that will open shortly. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mohammed Al-Mabrouk. Mohammed, for your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, and hello once again. We are here in Saudi, pleased to lead the geospatial survey design and mapping of the wider digital ecosystem with the geospatial. So briefly, I will outline the purpose, the scope, and the implementation strategy of the global survey, which is designed to map and understand the evolving relation between the geospatial ecosystem and the broader digital ecosystem, taking into account that it's aimed to fostering the sustainable development. So this survey builds on the UN IGIF principle and the FGIE insight to identify key components, the stakeholders, and the interconnections. It's include multiple choice, yes and no, and open-ended questions to gather both structures and qualitative input to ensure accessibilities to this survey. It will be available via Multimeters, SurveyMonkey, and Excel sheet. So in terms of next step, which will be including the finalizing the survey, also launching it globally and developing an initial mapping framework, leading to stakeholder validation and final recommendation. So your participation is vital in shaping the integrated and sustainable geospatial future, and I encourage you all to participate in this survey. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Let me then close with a cordial invitation to all, if you are able to join us for the second half of this webinar, which will be taking place March 19th or March 20th, depending on your location in the world. The link to register is here, and also we will include it in the chat below. We have a number of excellent speakers lined up for tomorrow's session, as well as we unpack the fundamental elements of the future geospatial information ecosystem. Let me close now just by thanking once again all of our distinguished executive and speakers, experts who gave of their time and their expertise today to help us pull this event together. And a resounding thank you to all participants and for your input and your feedback throughout the session. This is vital information for us. It helps us bridge the divide, I guess, between geospatial and the wider geospatial ecosystem, and understand a bit more of your particular perspectives use cases and requirements as we push this work forward. So I hope to see many of you again tomorrow. A reminder, this webinar itself was recorded and will be available on the UNGGIM website eventually, as will the session that we will run tomorrow. If you're unable to join us, you can always watch it later. Again, thank you to all participants, all speakers, all organizers, and all co-conveners. Very appreciated. Have a wonderful remainder of your day.